I still remember the moment everything in my life snapped in half. We were sitting in the fanciest restaurant in the city, candles glowing, jazz humming softly. And then an elderly woman I barely recognized slid a thick stack of cash toward me and whispered, "Call a cab. Run through the restroom window." I barely escaped that man myself. Her voice shook. Her eyes begged. And how all this happened. Let's start from the beginning before continuing. Please subscribe and tell me where you're watching this story from, because what I'm about to tell you is still unbelievable. Aaliyah Carter, 36. Soft-spoken, warm-hearted, the owner of a small flower shop had finally felt like life was settling peacefully. After losing both of her parents, she poured her entire soul into Carter Blossoms, the shop she built from nothing. It became her safe place, her comfort, her identity. And then Marcus Braxton walked into her shop one sunny afternoon. Tall, handsome, charming, older by 4 years. With a voice smooth enough to soften a storm, he came in to buy flowers for his mother. That day he left with more than daisies. He left with Aaliyah's heart. Their romance was quick but beautiful. A whirlwind that felt natural, easy, meant to be. Marcus treated her gently, too gently, she would later realize. He never brought cliché roses. He brought her daisies, her favorite. He listened to every childhood story. He remembered every date. He never pushed, never pressured. And 2 weeks after their courthouse wedding, she was still whispering the word husband in her mind, almost to convince herself it was real. That night at the Grand Oak Room felt like a celebration of everything she thought she had finally earned in life: love, safety, a future. Marcus held her hand across the table, his palm warm, his smile soft. "Aaliyah, you're the miracle I didn't know I needed," he told her. She laughed shyly and squeezed his hand back. His mother, Lorraine Braxton, a polished, respected city official, had welcomed her from day one with grace and warmth. Every interaction with her felt stable, maternal, something Aaliyah quietly craved. But while dessert menus were being set on the table, Marcus's phone buzzed. He frowned, sighed, and apologized. "Persistent business people," he muttered. "I'll step out to the lobby. Order the raspberry one you love." He kissed her forehead and walked out. That was the last normal moment of Aaliyah Carter's life. She looked around the room, smiling to herself until her gaze landed on an older woman sitting alone nearby. Her face looked familiar, soft, tired, quiet. Aaliyah had seen her before buying orange Gerbera daisies in her shop. Miss Georgia Hayes. Everyone at the shop affectionately called her Gerbera Georgia. But tonight, Miss Georgia didn't look gentle or warm. She looked terrified the moment their eyes met. Miss Georgia stood up shaking, walked straight to Aaliyah's table, and leaned so close Aaliyah felt her breath tremble. "Honey, listen to me carefully," she whispered, pressing a thick wad of cash into Aaliyah's hand. "My daughter married that man, Marcus Braxton. She ain't alive anymore. You understand me?" Aaliyah blinked. The room seemed to tilt. Miss Georgia gripped her tighter. "You need to call a cab and run through the back restroom window. Right now? You've got maybe a minute before his people come in here? Please, baby. I'm begging you." Aaliyah froze. Was this a prank? A mistake? But the terror in Miss Georgia's eyes was real. Too real. Then Aaliyah saw them. 2 huge bald men in leather jackets had entered the restaurant. They weren't waiting for a table. They were scanning the room like predators. And when their eyes landed on her, they didn't look away. Aaliyah's pulse exploded. What would you do if someone warned you, your spouse, was deadly? Believe them or stay seated? Do you think Aaliyah should run or confront Marcus? Aaliyah stood so fast her chair toppled over, clutching the cash. Instinct screamed one word: run. Don Single quotes to miss the next part, where Aaliyah makes a desperate escape that turns the entire restaurant upside down. Asterisk, I still remember the moment everything in my life snapped in half. We were sitting in the fanciest restaurant in the city, candles glowing, jazz humming softly. And then an elderly woman I barely recognized slid a thick stack of cash toward me and whispered, Call a cab. Run through the restroom window. I barely escaped that man myself. Her voice shook. Her eyes begged. And how all this happened. Let's start from the beginning before continuing. Please subscribe and tell me where you're watching this story from, because what I'm about to tell you is still unbelievable. Aaliyah Carter, 36. Soft-spoken, warm-hearted, the owner of a small flower shop had finally felt like life was settling peacefully. After losing both of her parents, she poured her entire soul into Carter Blossoms, the shop she built from nothing. It became her safe place, her comfort, her identity. And then Marcus Braxton walked into her shop one sunny afternoon. Tall, handsome, charming, older by 4 years. With a voice smooth enough to soften a storm, he came in to buy flowers for his mother. That day he left with more than daisies. He left with Aaliyah's heart. Their romance was quick but beautiful. A whirlwind that felt natural, easy, meant to be. Marcus treated her gently, too gently, she would later realize. He never brought cliché roses. He brought her daisies, her favorite. He listened to every childhood story. He remembered every date. He never pushed, never pressured. And 2 weeks after their courthouse wedding, she was still whispering the word husband in her mind, almost to convince herself it was real. That night at the Grand Oak Room felt like a celebration of everything she thought she had finally earned in life. Love, safety, a future. Marcus held her hand across the table, his palm warm, his smile soft. "Aaliyah, you're the miracle I didn't know I needed," he told her. She laughed shyly and squeezed his hand back. His mother, Lorraine Braxton, a polished, respected city official, had welcomed her from day one with grace and warmth. Every interaction with her felt stable, maternal, something Aaliyah quietly craved. But while dessert menus were being set on the table, Marcus's phone buzzed. He frowned, sighed, and apologized. "Persistent business people," he muttered. "I'll step out to the lobby. Order the raspberry one you love." He kissed her forehead and walked out. That was the last normal moment of Aaliyah Carter's life. She looked around the room, smiling to herself until her gaze landed on an older woman sitting alone nearby. Her face looked familiar, soft, tired, quiet. Aaliyah had seen her before buying orange Gerbera daisies in her shop. Miss Georgia Hayes. Everyone at the shop affectionately called her Gerbera Georgia. But tonight, Miss Georgia didn't look gentle or warm. She looked terrified the moment their eyes met. Miss Georgia stood up shaking, walked straight to Aaliyah's table, and leaned so close Aaliyah felt her breath tremble. "Honey, listen to me carefully," she whispered, pressing a thick wad of cash into Aaliyah's hand. "My daughter married that man, Marcus Braxton. She ain't alive anymore. You understand me?" Aaliyah blinked. The room seemed to tilt. Miss Georgia gripped her tighter. "You need to call a cab and run through the back restroom window. Right now? You've got maybe a minute before his people come in here? Please, baby. I'm begging you." Aaliyah froze. Was this a prank? A mistake? But the terror in Miss Georgia's eyes was real. Too real. Then Aaliyah saw them. 2 huge bald men in leather jackets had entered the restaurant. They weren't waiting for a table. They were scanning the room like predators. And when their eyes landed on her, they didn't look away. Aaliyah's pulse exploded. What would you do if someone warned you, your spouse, was deadly? Believe them or stay seated? Do you think Aaliyah should run or confront Marcus? Aaliyah stood so fast her chair toppled over, clutching the cash. Instinct screamed one word. Run. Dawn single quotes to miss the next part, where Aaliyah makes a desperate escape that turns the entire restaurant upside down. The siren wailed like a wounded animal, echoing off the porcelain tiles so violently that Aaliyah felt it inside her bones. Strobe lights flickered through the restroom doorframe, washing the room in flashes of red and white. Outside, chaos erupted. Screams, footsteps, crashing dishes. Aaliyah could hear chairs scraping across the marble floors as diners rushed to escape the supposed fire. She wasn't sure if there was an actual fire, but she prayed there wasn't. She had enough danger for a lifetime. The handle jerked again. Aaliyah. Marcus barked, his voice losing its calm facade. Don't make a scene. Open this door now. She ignored him and stepped back as the lock turned once. Twice. The door burst open. Framed in the doorway stood Victor Sanders, the impeccably dressed restaurant manager who had earlier checked on their table with a smile so warm she believed it. Now, his face held nothing but cold, irritated contempt. Behind him, the hallway was filled with panicked guests, pushing in every direction. Smoke, thin but real, drifted through the corridor, likely from the kitchen. Alarms and shouting blended into a frantic roar. Aaliyah didn't wait for Victor to speak. The moment he stepped forward, she shoved him with every ounce of strength inside her. He stumbled backward, knocking into a server carrying a tray, and Aaliyah sprinted past them into the hallway. She nearly collided with a woman holding a crying toddler. A man grabbed his wife's arm, yelling over the siren. Employees waved guests toward the exit. Broken plates littered the floor. The restaurant was bedlam. And somewhere in that mess, Marcus? She risked a glance over her shoulder. There he was, standing across the dining room with his sleeves rolled up, moving against the crowd like a wolf through tall grass. His expression was no longer patient, no longer charming. It was pure calculation. Aaliyah's breath stopped. She pushed through the bodies, ignoring the curses and startled cries. Her pulse raced so hard she couldn't distinguish the beating from the siren's rhythm. She reached the grand staircase leading outside, and someone screamed from behind her. There she is! Her stomach dropped. The two bald men in leather jackets barreled through the crowd, eyes locked on her like a pair of hunting dogs unleashed. Aaliyah grabbed the banister and hurled herself down the stairs. The cold night air smacked her face the instant she pushed through the front doors. Her lungs seized. Run! She ran down the steps so fast she almost fell, then sprinted across the sidewalk. A valet shouted something at her, confused, but she didn't hear the words, only the sound of her own choking breath. Cars honked. Tires screeched as drivers panicked at the sudden flood of people pouring from the restaurant. Aaliyah scanned the street desperately. Then the headlights. A white sedan sat idling at the curb, exactly where her ride app said it would be. She flung herself toward the car just as the passenger door opened. "Miss Carter." The driver called out. "Yes," she gasped, diving in. The second the door slammed shut, she twisted around and stared through the back window. Marcus burst through the restaurant doors, followed by the two bald men. For one terrifying moment, his gaze swept the sidewalk. Then he saw her. His face changed. Not shock, not pain, not fear, something colder. A knowing smile. He lifted his hand, not to wave, not to call out, but to signal. The driver stepped on the gas. The car jerked forward, tires squealing. The night swallowed the restaurant behind them. Aaliyah pressed her forehead against the cold window, tears stinging the corners of her eyes. Fear still wrapped around her like a vice, but something else began to rise beneath it. A chilling awareness. Marcus hadn't been surprised. He wasn't scrambling. He wasn't confused. He knew she'd try to run. He expected it. He had planned for it. Don't miss the next part, where Aaliyah finds shocking news waiting for her at the only place she thinks is safe. Asterisk, the city lights streaked past the car windows as the rideshare sped through downtown. Aaliyah sat curled into herself in the back seat, gripping her purse so tightly her knuckles throbbed. Her pulse still hadn't slowed since she'd left the restaurant. She kept looking behind them, terrified of seeing Marcus's familiar black SUV closing in. But the driver, an older man with graying sideburns and a calm voice, kept glancing at her through the rearview mirror. "You all right back there?" he asked gently. Aaliyah swallowed hard. Just a really bad night. He didn't push her, just nodded knowingly and kept driving. The moment the car turned onto the quieter streets of her neighborhood, Aaliyah's breathing eased. Her flower shop was only a few blocks away, cozy, pastel-painted storefront, tucked between a bakery and an old record shop. It was the one place in the world where she felt safe. Her parents' last gift. Her sanctuary. She held on to that hope like a lifeline. "We're here," the driver announced as he pulled up to the curb. The street was empty. The windows of Carter Blossoms glowed faintly, illuminated by the small lamp she always left on inside. The sight should have soothed her. But something felt off. She stepped out of the car and thanked the driver before he pulled away. The moment his taillights faded, the silence of the night tightened around her. Aaliyah hurried to the shop door and unlocked it with trembling hands. She pushed it open and froze. The bell above the door chimed softly, but the air inside the shop was cold. Too cold. And something was wrong. Scent of fresh flowers, her roses, lilacs, gardenias usually filled the entire space. But tonight the air smelled stale. Heavy-weighted with something she couldn't name. She closed the door and locked it behind her, then switched on the overhead lights. Everything looked normal. Her display tables were still covered in carefully arranged bouquets. Her chalkboard. Calendars still hung behind the register, filled with colorful notes for upcoming wedding orders. Her plants glowed softly under their lamps. But an unsettling, creeping sense told her she wasn't alone. Aaliyah moved slowly behind the counter, her heart pounding. She checked the back room, empty. Checked the supply closet, empty. She walked toward the door leading to the basement storage and stopped. A tiny sliver of light glowed beneath the door. It's a warm, moving light. She hadn't left that light on. Her breath hitched. She stepped back, fear crawling up her spine. Before she could decide what to do, her phone buzzed. Duh! The screen lit up with a message from an unknown number. She hesitated, then opened it. "You shouldn't have run." Aaliyah's knees weakened. Another message came instantly after. "Go home." She turned off the phone and backed away from the basement door, her breath trembling. Marcus had never texted her from an unknown number. Not once. He wasn't careless, which meant he was using a phone she didn't know about, which meant he planned this. Suddenly, the basement door creaked, just slightly. Aaliyah clamped a hand over her mouth to stop the sound escaping her throat. The bulb beneath the door flickered, throwing shadows onto the floor. Then, knock. Knock, two soft rhythmic taps from the other side. She staggered backward, knocking over a bucket of ribbon rolls. They clattered across the floor, the noise echoing painfully loud in the still shop. Her instincts screamed at her to run. But she didn't go to the front door. Bolted toward the back exit, the one used for deliveries. Her hands fumbled desperately with the locks. She ripped the door open and stumbled backward in horror. A man stood outside, a hulking figure. One of the bald men from the restaurant. He didn't speak, didn't move, just stared at her with flat, unreadable eyes. Aaliyah's scream lodged in her throat. Before she could react, footsteps echoed behind her from inside the shop. Slow, heavy. Approaching, she was trapped between them. Her sanctuary had become a cage. Don't miss the next part, where Aaliyah is forced into a terrifying confrontation and learns the first chilling truth about why Marcus wants her. Aaliyah's body locked in place, breath frozen in her chest. The man blocking the back exit didn't flinch. He didn't lift a hand or step forward. He just stood there, filling the doorway like a shadow carved out of the night. Behind her, the footsteps coming from inside the shop grew louder, measured, heavy, purposeful. Aaliyah backed into a corner, her trembling fingers finding the edge of a metal shelf. Her heartbeat hammered so loudly she could barely hear anything else. Her shop, her sanctuary, felt suddenly too small. Every wall closing in on her, the basement door creaked open fully, and another man stepped out. Not Marcus. Not the restaurant manager. This man was older, leaner, with sharp features and a cold, calculating stillness that made her skin crawl. He wore dark slacks, a dress shirt, and a leather holster that hugged his left shoulder, her entire body, TENSED. He looked like someone who had never been surprised by anything in his life. His eyes fell on her with unsettling calm. "Aaliyah Carter," he said, voice smooth, deep, unnervingly controlled. You made quite the scene tonight. She pressed harder into the corner. Who are you? His gaze flicked toward the man at the back door. Then back to her. My name is David Rowe. She'd never heard it before. I work with your husband. Her stomach plummeted. Marcus had never mentioned him, not once, not even in passing. Marcus always spoke vaguely about business, meetings, or administrative projects, but never names. Never specifics. David took a step closer. You weren't supposed to run. Marcus wanted to handle this gently, quietly. Gently, quietly. The words sounded like poison. What do you want? She forced out. David studied her carefully, as though choosing the simplest version of the truth. You, Mrs. Braxton. Her breath snagged. For what? He didn't answer. Not directly. Instead, he motioned for the man at the back door to stay put. Then walked slowly around the shop, touching nothing, observing everything. Her floral displays, her ribbon wall, the picture of her parents on the counter. You've built something respectable here, he said calmly. Marcus admires that. Her throat tightened. Marcus loved this place. He said it was a cover. David interrupted bluntly. The words sliced through her. Not for you, he added. For him. Aaliyah felt her vision blur. I don't understand. He finally looked at her with something colder than contempt, pity. You weren't supposed to know anything. Your marriage was not a mistake, Aaliyah. It was. A selection. A shiver crawled up her spine. A selection. As if she were an item. A tool. A chosen piece for a puzzle she hadn't realized existed. David continued. Your background. Your financial state. Your family ties. Your isolation. All of it made you ideal. Her knees nearly buckled. My. Isolation. You have no parents. No siblings. No ex-husband. No children. You live alone. You run a business alone. You disappear icily. Tears brimmed in her eyes. So that's why he married me. She whispered. Because I was. Convenient. David's silence was confirmation enough. She felt everything inside her shatter at once. But David wasn't finished. He reached into his jacket and pulled out something. Small, thin plastic. A driver's license? He tossed it onto the floor at her feet. Aaliyah stared down at it. Her lungs collapsed. It was her driver's license. Except it wasn't. Her name was the same. But the photo wasn't. The address wasn't. The signature WASN single quotes. Everything was hers. Except that it wasn't her. A second identity. A complete duplication created without her. Knowledge. David watched her reaction with clinical interest. You were supposed to transition into that identity next week, he said. Marcus wanted time to explain everything slowly. But you accelerated the timeline. Aaliyah couldn't breathe. What identity? She whispered. David stepped closer, lowering his voice. The one you'll need when you leave the country. Her heart stopped mid-beat. Leave the country. David tilted his head, studying her unraveling fear. That, he said softly, is why Marcus wants you, and why you are not allowed to disappear. The man at the back door shifted, cracking his knuckles. David took another step forward. Come quietly. Don't make this worse. Kolya trembled violently. She wasn't ready. Not for answers. Not for escape. Not for whatever they wanted. But she knew one thing with absolute clarity. She would not go quietly. Don't miss the next part where Aaliyah makes a desperate move that forces the night into an explosive turn. Asterisk. Aaliyah's mind raced so fast she could barely feel her legs beneath her. David Rowe stood only a few feet away, perfectly calm. As if the entire night had been nothing more than an unexpected meeting gone slightly off schedule. The bald man at the back door still blocked her only visible exit, his stance firm, unmoving, predatory. Her shop suddenly felt too bright, too exposed. David extended a hand toward her, not threatening, just certain. Let's go, he said softly. This will be easier if we don't force it. Easier for who? Aaliyah clutched the metal shelf behind her to steady herself, feeling the cold steel bite into her palm. Her mind flashed through every bouquet she'd ever arranged. Every morning she'd opened the shop doors. Every quiet moment she'd believed she was safe. Marcus had built his lies inside her peace. He had chosen her because she was alone. He had used her life as a blueprint. A wave of dizziness crashed over her. David took another step. That was enough. Aaliyah's fear sharpened into something else, an instinctive, almost animal surge of survival. Her eyes darted to the nearest thing she could reach, a heavy vase of hydrangeas resting on the display table. Without thinking, she grabbed it with both hands and hurled it toward David with everything she had. The vase shattered against the floor inches from his feet, exploding into a spray of water, petals, and sharp glass shards. David didn't flinch. He simply looked at the shattered pile, then back at her. "You're emotional," he said quietly. "Understandable, but unnecessary. Unnecessary." Something cracked open inside her. She backed away quickly, scanning the room for another chance, another opening, anything. Her eyes landed on the front of the shop. Big glass windows, facing the street, wide, breakable. If she could get through them, if she could get outside, if she could reach anyone before they dragged her back. David saw where she was looking. His expression shifted, for the first time, something like annoyance flickering across his face. "Aaliyah," he warned. "Don't." But she was already moving. She sprinted across the shop, weaving between displays, knocking over buckets of roses and eucalyptus stems. David lunged after her, shouting a command to the man behind her. "Grab her." Aaliyah didn't look back. She tightened her grip on the metal shelf she'd steadied herself with earlier. Now ripped free from the wall and charged toward the front window with a desperate cry. She swung the metal bar as hard as she could. The first hit cracked the glass. The second fractured it deeper. The third, the entire pane shattered outward in a violent spray of glass, raining onto the sidewalk. Cold night air rushed into the shop. Aaliyah jumped. Her landing was messy. Glass sliced her palms, her knees hit the pavement hard, and pain shot up her legs. But she didn't stop. She pushed herself up and staggered to her feet. That was when she heard David shout, "Bring her back!" The man at the back door charged through the shop toward her. And David followed at a controlled pace, determined, not panicked. Aaliyah bolted down the sidewalk, ignoring the sting of the cuts on her hands. Her heart pounded against her ribs. She didn't know where she was going, only that she needed distance. She ran past the bakery, past the closed record shop, past the alley that smelled like oil and damp stone. Then she saw it. A figure standing under a flickering streetlight at the far end of the block. Her mind spun. Was it another one of them? Another one of Marcus's people? She slowed just slightly, breath shaking, and the figure stepped forward into the light. It wasn't Marcus. It wasn't David. It wasn't one of the bald men. It was someone she recognized. Someone she never expected to see again. Someone who should have had no reason to be here at all. Her entire body froze. Why were they here? And how did they find her? Don't miss the next part, where the person under the streetlight changes. Everything Aaliyah thought she knew about her past. And Marcus's plan. Aaliyah stumbled to a stop, her breath ragged, blood warm on her palms. The streetlight above flickered weakly, washing the figure at the end of the block in a trembling glow. For a moment, Aaliyah thought her mind was playing tricks on her, that fear had finally twisted into hallucination. But when the figure stepped closer, she knew she was awake. "Kiana?" Aaliyah whispered, her voice cracking. Kiana Jones, her closest friend from high school. A woman she hadn't spoken to in nearly 14 years. A woman who had disappeared from her life without a goodbye, without a reason, without a trace. Yet here she was, standing in front of her like she'd simply walked out of a memory. Her hair was shorter now, cut close at the sides. She wore a dark denim jacket, black jeans, and boots scuffed from use. Her expression was tense, alert, almost grim. "Aaliyah," Kiana breathed, looking her up and down. "God, you're bleeding." Aaliyah backed away instinctively. No, this isn't real." Why are you here? How did you find Kiana didn't let her finish? She grabbed Alia's arm gently, but firmly. We don't have time. They're coming. The words sliced through the fog of confusion. Kiana pulled her toward the alley beside the bakery. Aaliyah resisted for a moment, not because she didn't want to escape, but because her mind was struggling to connect the pieces. Kiana, you can't just show up. I haven't seen you in years. How do you even know about any of this? Kiana didn't look at her. She peered over her shoulder, eyes scanning the street for movement. I should have come sooner, she said tightly. Believe me, I didn't want it to be like this. Aaliyah's chest tightened. The fact that Kiana knew anything made everything worse. What do you know? Aaliyah demanded, her voice trembling. About Marcus. About those men. About me. Kiana exhaled, the sound rough and tired. More than you want to hear right now. Aaliyah flinched. Before she could press further, heavy footsteps thundered onto the street behind them. The bald man and David Rowe, both emerging from the shattered front of Carter Blossoms. David spotted them instantly. There, he shouted. Kiana swore under her breath. We have to go now. She dragged Aaliyah deeper into the alley. The smell of metal and rain-soaked concrete surrounded them. Aaliyah's head spun, everything happening too fast, every instinct yelling that she shouldn't trust anyone. Not Marcus, not David, not strangers. But Kiana? Kiana was the girl who once slept on her bedroom floor after Aaliyah's mother died, refusing to leave her alone. The girl who walked miles after school just to keep her company. The girl who protected her more fiercely than anyone, until the day she vanished. Aaliyah yanked her arm free. Stop. You don't get to disappear and then just come back like this. Tell me what's going on. Kiana hesitated. Not long, just a heartbeat. But it was enough to show she was choosing her words carefully. Aaliyah, Marcus isn't the beginning of your story, she said quietly. He's the continuation of something that started a long time ago. Aaliyah stared at her, breath unsteady. What are you talking about? Kiana opened her mouth to answer, but a crash echoed through the alley as a trash can toppled behind them. David Rowe's voice rang out. Take them both. Panic surged through Aaliyah. Kiana grabbed her wrist again. Move. They sprinted down the alley, feet slapping against wet pavement, lungs burning from cold night air. The alley funneled them toward a chain-link fence at the far end, illuminated only by the weak glow of a distant street lamp. Kiana reached it first, leaped halfway up, and began climbing with practiced ease. Aaliyah, up. She ordered. Aaliyah scrambled after her, gripping the metal links with burning palms. David's footsteps grew louder. He was fast, much faster than she expected. She reached the top just as Kiana hopped down the other side. Aaliyah swung one leg over, but David lunged and grabbed her ankle. Aaliyah shrieked as he yanked hard, trying to pull her back down into the alley. Kiana rushed forward, reached through the fence, and grabbed Aaliyah's hand with both of hers. Hold on, Kiana screamed. Aaliyah clung to her desperately, her body suspended between the two forces, David pulling her down and Kiana pulling her forward. Her muscles burned. Her arms shook violently. Something had to break, and she feared it might be her. Don't miss the next part, where Aaliyah learns the devastating truth about why Kiana disappeared, and why Marcus chose her long before they ever met. David's grip was iron around Aaliyah's ankle, dragging her downward with brutal force. Her fingers slipped along the cold metal of the fence, boots scraping against the links as she fought to keep herself from being pulled back into the alley. All you look at me, Kiana yelled from the other side. Aaliyah lifted her tear-filled eyes just enough to meet Kiana's. Her friend's jaw was clenched, her arms trembling as she pulled with every ounce of strength she had. Don't let go, Kiana pleaded. Not now. Not after everything. Aaliyah didn't understand what everything meant, but she didn't have time to ask. David yanked her ankle again, harder this time. Pain shot up her leg, white and sharp. Her grip slipped another inch. Kiana, Aaliyah cried. Hold on. Kiana suddenly reached into her boot and pulled out something small and metallic, a retractable baton. With a swift flick of her wrist, The baton snapped open. She leaned through the fence and struck David's arm with a vicious practiced blow. David grunted and recoiled just enough that his grip slipped. "Go!" Kiana shouted. Aaliyah used the opening. She twisted, kicked free, and threw herself over the top of the fence. She landed in a heap next to Kiana, her palms screaming as fresh cuts reopened. Kiana grabbed her arm. "Get up." They ran. Behind them, David slammed against the fence, shaking it violently, but he didn't climb. He didn't even try. He just watched them through the mesh with cold fury as they disappeared into the shadows of the connecting street. When they finally stopped running, both women collapsed behind an abandoned loading dock 2 blocks away. Aaliyah pressed her back against the cracked brick wall, her chest aching from exertion. Kiana leaned over, hands on her knees, struggling to catch her breath. For a moment, the only sounds were their gasps and the faint hum of distant traffic. Aaliyah finally managed Kiana. "What is happening? Why are you here? How do you know him? How do you know Marcus?" Kiana didn't look at her at first. Instead, she stared toward the alley they'd escaped from, jaw-tight eyes scanning every movement. "I didn't want you to find out like this," she said softly. "Find out what?" Aaliyah demanded, voice cracking. Kiana turned toward her. In the dim streetlight, her face looked older than Aaliyah, remembered harder. Marked by years of battles Aaliyah knew nothing about. "I didn't disappear because I wanted to," Kiana said. "I disappeared because I had to." Aaliyah shook her head, tears threatening again. "Kiana, you left. No calls, no messages, nothing. I thought you just didn't want me anymore." Those words hurt to say, more than anything that had happened tonight. Kiana flinched. "Aaliyah, I left because they were watching me. Because they were waiting for me to get close to someone they could use." Aaliyah froze. "Use," Kiana continued, her voice low and bitter. "Marcus's people. David's network. Whatever you think this is, it didn't start with him. It started with someone else entirely." "But I didn't even know Marcus then," Aaliyah whispered. Kiana's eyes dropped to the ground. "No, but they knew you." Aaliyah felt the air drain from her lungs. "What do you mean they knew me?" Kiana hesitated, really hesitated, like she was deciding whether Aaliyah was ready to hear the truth. Then she spoke. "Aaliyah, you weren't chosen because you were easy to disappear." Her heartbeat slowed, dread crawling cold through her chest. "You were chosen," Kiana said quietly, "because of who your father used to be." Aaliyah stared at her, stunned. "My father." "Kiana, my father died when I was 12. Kiana swallowed hard. "I know. And that's why they've been waiting. Hey?" Chills slithered down Aaliyah's spine. "Waiting for what?" she whispered. Kiana held her gaze, eyes filled with something Aaliyah didn't recognize, fear, mixed with guilt. "For you," Kiana said. "They've been waiting for you your whole life." Kia felt her entire body go cold. Her voice shook. "Why? Who was my father?" Kiana's lips parted. But footsteps echoed at the end of the street, slow, deliberate, approaching. Kiana stiffened and pulled Aaliyah up by the arm. "We have to move," she whispered urgently. "Because once you hear the truth, they won't stop coming." Don't miss the next part, where Kiana finally reveals the buried history of Aaliyah's father. And the reason Marcus's people will do anything to keep her under their control. Kiana pulled Aaliyah into the shadows behind the loading dock, her grip firm but trembling. The approaching footsteps grew louder, echoing against the concrete walls. Whoever was coming wasn't running. They were walking with purpose, confident. Tracking, Kiana pressed a finger to her lips and guided Aaliyah behind a rusted dumpster. They crouched low, breaths held as the footsteps entered the narrow street behind them. A tall silhouette passed under the streetlight, one of Marcus's men from the restaurant. He scanned the area, his head tilting just slightly, as though he could smell their fear through the wind. Aaliyah's heart pounded so hard it shook her shoulders. Kiana squeezed her arm, steadying her, silently urging her not to move. After a few 10 seconds, the man continued down the street, turning at the corner. Only when the sound of footsteps faded did Kiana finally exhale. She motioned for Alia to follow her deeper into the old industrial district. They kept to the shadows, avoiding the open sidewalks. Every sound, the hum of a distant engine, a loose sign rattling in the wind, felt like a threat. "Where are we going?" Alia whispered. "Somewhere they won't check," Kiana said, scanning the rooftops. Alia stopped walking. "No, not until you tell me what you meant about my father." Kiana turned, her face taut with conflict. "Alia, this isn't the time. Tonight I found out my husband married me as part of some selection," Alia snapped, her voice breaking. "I saw a second identity with my name on it. I ran from men trying to drag me away. And you showed up out of nowhere after disappearing for half my life. I deserve answers." Kiana closed her eyes for a moment, as if steadying herself. Then she nodded. "All right. But I need you to breathe while I tell you this. 'Cause it's not small, Alia. It's not simple." Alia swallowed hard. "Tell me." Kiana leaned against a brick wall, the yellow streetlight casting a somber glow over her face. "Your father wasn't who you think he was." Alia bristled. "He was an accountant. He worked at a bank. He died in a car accident when that's the story your mother told you," Kiana said gently. "And she told it because she thought it was the only way to keep you alive." Alia's world tilted. "No," she whispered. "No, Kiana, my mother would never lie about something like that." "She would if someone made her," Kiana said, voice heavy. "Your father, Christopher Carter, wasn't a bank accountant. He was a whistleblower. A federal analyst gathering evidence on the same network Marcus works for now." Alia froze. Every sound around her drained into silence. "He infiltrated their financial systems," Kiana continued. "He found things he wasn't supposed to find, offshore accounts, false identities, federal money being pulled into private hands. And when the network learned someone was inside their books," she looked directly at Alia, "they targeted him." Alia's throat closed. "You're lying." "I wish I were." Kiana shook her head. "Christopher Carter didn't die in a car accident. He was killed. His car was staged. And your mother escaped with you before they could finish what they started." Alia staggered back a step, her legs weakening. "But why come after me?" she whispered. "I was a child." "Because the evidence your father collected never surfaced." Kiana's voice tightened. "They think he passed something to someone or hid it. And every trail leads back to one person, his daughter." Alia felt her pulse climb into her throat. "I don't have anything." Kiana stepped closer. "But they believe you do, even if you don't know it." Alia shook her head violently. "I don't. My father he never told me anything. I was 12. And that," Kiana said quietly, "is exactly why you were chosen." Alia's breath hitched. "Marcus married you," Kiana continued. "Not because he loved you, though. He played it well. But because you were the last loose end connected to your father's unfinished case." Alia pressed a trembling hand to her mouth, trying to hold back the wave of grief and disbelief rising inside her. Everything suddenly made sense. And yet nothing felt real. "My entire life," she whispered, "has been a setup." Kiana nodded grimly. "And it's only getting started." Before Alia could respond, a soft click echoed above the metal, shifting on a rooftop. Kiana's eyes snapped upward. "Get down," she whispered sharply. A second click sounded. Then a red dot appeared on the brick wall beside Alia's head. "Aweza." Don't miss the next part, where Alia and Kiana face a silent rooftop. A tack that finally exposes just how far Marcus's network is willing to go to bring her in. Asterisk, the red laser dot hovered just inches from Alia's cheek, glowing like a tiny burning eye on the brick wall. Time slowed. Her breath hitched. Somewhere above them, on a dark rooftop, a hidden shooter adjusted their aim with chilling precision. Take a second to like and subscribe, then press the bell icon to stay with me for more stories like this one. Kiana didn't hesitate. She shoved Alia hard enough to knock her completely off balance. The two of them fell behind the dumpster just as a sharp crack split the air. A bullet punched into the brick where Alia had been standing a heartbeat earlier. Concrete dust rained down. Aaliyah's ears rang. Oh my God. Kiana grabbed her shoulders, forcing her to focus. Aaliyah, listen to me. They don't want you dead. They just want you scared enough to run where they want you to run. Aaliyah blinked, shaking. Then why fire at me? Kiana's jaw flexed. Because they're trying to funnel us. Come on. She pulled Aaliyah to her feet, keeping low as another shot cracked through the night. This one hit a metal door behind them with a violent clang. The sound reverberated through the alley like a warning. Kiana scanned the rooftops, her eyes darting across the dark skyline. There's only one shooter, she muttered. But he's trained. Really trained, Aaliyah staggered. You're talking like. You've dealt with this before. Kiana didn't answer, which was an answer itself. They moved fast, weaving from cover to cover behind piled crates, between parked dumpsters, under jutting fire escapes. Every few seconds, another bullet tore into metal or brick. The shooter tracking their movements with unnerving accuracy but never hitting them directly. Kiana, this makes no sense, Leah whispered breathlessly. Why gunfire if they need me alive? Because a scared target moves predictably, Kiana said, and predictable targets are easier to intercept. Aaliyah's stomach dropped. You mean, yes? Kiana said. Someone is waiting ahead. They reached the edge of the alley, where it opened onto a narrow street lit only by a flickering neon sign from a closed liquor store. The shooter had stopped, firing gone, eerily quiet. Too quiet. Kiana held out an arm, blocking Aaliyah from stepping forward. Stay behind me. Aaliyah clutched her torn palms, blood dripping between her fingers. The cold bit at her skin, but fear burned hotter than anything. Why me? She whispered, voice breaking. Why my life? Why now? Kiana kept scanning the rooftops as she answered. 'Cause whatever your father died protecting, it's about to surface again. Aaliyah's breath stilled. Marcus thinks he's the one who can control it. David thinks he can manage you quietly. The network thinks you're a liability, and the people loyal to your father think you're the last hope. Aaliyah felt the world tilt. Father had loyal people. Yes, Kiana said quietly, and I was one of them. Aaliyah's chest tightened, shock cutting through her like ice. You were working with him. No, Kiana said. I was working under him. He protected people like me, okay? And when he died, the people who killed him started looking at everyone connected to him, including you. Aaliyah felt tears burn her eyes. You left to protect me. Kiana's throat bobbed. I had to. If they saw how close we were, her voice stopped. A dark van turned onto the narrow street ahead, sweeping across the pavement. Kiana cursed under her breath, grabbed Aaliyah's wrist, and yanked her back into the alley just as the van rolled to a slow crawl. They found us, Kiana whispered. The van stopped. Its side door slid open with a low mechanical grind, and a man stepped out. Not Marcus, not David, someone else entirely. Someone with a hard expression and a badge hanging from his neck. Aaliyah couldn't fully see. Kiana froze. No, not them. Aaliyah stared, heart pounding. Who is that? Kiana's voice came out as a whisper of disbelief. Your father's last contact. Aaliyah's breath caught. The man looked directly at them and raised both hands, not in threat, but in surrender. Aaliyah Carter, he called softly. I'm here to help you. Don't miss the next part, where Aaliyah meets the man who claims to be her father's final ally, and learns the price of trusting him may be as dangerous as running from Marcus. The man stepped out of the van with slow, careful movements. His hands remained raised, palms open, illuminated by the faint neon flicker from the liquor store sign. He wore a dark jacket, faded jeans, and a silver badge clipped to a chain around his neck. Aaliyah squinted, trying to read it, but Kiana jerked her arm and pulled her a step back. Don't trust him, Kiana warned in a breathless whisper. The man stopped a few feet away, his voice steady but urgent. My name is Agent Daryl Lawson. I worked with your father. I've been trying to find you for years. Aaliyah froze. Her father's name still sat raw in the back of her throat. Everything Kiana had told her echoing like a distant siren. "You're lying," Kiana said sharply, stepping between him and Aaliyah. "If you were with Christopher Carter, you'd know the signal." Lawson nodded, almost relieved by the challenge. "I thought you'd say that." Slowly reached into his jacket. Kiana immediately stepped forward. Baton raised, but Lawson pulled out nothing except a small metal coin. He tossed it gently toward the ground between them. It landed at Alia's feet with a soft metallic clink. She frowned and bent to look. It was a circular brass coin, scratched with age, and engraved with a symbol she recognized instantly. A lily dot, her father's favorite flower. Her breath caught. "I know this." Kiana's eyes widened with the same recognition. "That's not public," she whispered. "There's no way he'd know that unless I was there," Lawson finished. "The night your father was killed." Aaliyah's knees almost gave out. Her hands trembled violently, the cuts burning as blood dripped onto the concrete. Lawson took one slow step forward. "Your father wasn't just exposing Marcus's network. He uncovered something bigger: people inside the government who were funneling money, erasing identities, and eliminating witnesses. They called themselves the Arc Line." Kiana's expression darkened. "They called themselves that." Past tense. Lawson nodded gravely. "Because Christopher destroyed half of them before they got to him." Aaliyah felt her chest tighten. She didn't know if she should be proud, terrified, or both. "But they're rebuilding," Lawson continued. "And Marcus is one of their new faces." Aaliyah felt her heart drop into her stomach. "My husband is part of this." "Not just part," Lawson said. "He's becoming a leader." And he hesitated, as if weighing whether to speak the next words. "You were supposed to be his leverage." Aaliyah's breath shook. "Leverage for what?" "To access what your father left behind." "I don't have anything," she cried, her voice cracking. Lawson shook his head. "Not physically. But your father encoded part of the evidence into something he knew they'd never suspect." Aaliyah stared at him, mind spinning. "What?" she whispered. Lawson's eyes softened. "Into you." Her skin prickled. "What does that mean?" Before Lawson could answer, sudden blast like a firecracker erupted from the rooftop above. Kiana swore and shoved Aaliyah to the ground as a bullet ricocheted off the van door. "Sniper's back," Kiana yelled. Lawson dove behind the van. "Move, get inside." Kiana grabbed Aaliyah's arm, pulling her toward the van butt. Aaliyah froze, staring at Lawson. He opened the back door and shouted, "Aaliyah, if you stay out there, they will take you alive, and you will never be seen again." Aaliyah's pulse thrashed out behind her. Footsteps thundered from the alley, the bald man, and another figure emerging into the open street in front of her. The sniper's laser flickered across the hood of the van, and beside her, Kiana yelled, "Aaliyah, choose." Aaliyah's world condensed into three impossible choices: run forward into Lawson's van, run backward into Marcus's men, or run into the dark street alone. Each choice felt like destiny and like death, and she had seconds to decide. Don't miss the next part, where Aaliyah makes a life-changing choice that determines who she can trust and who she must run from forever. Asterisk for a split second. Everything around Aaliyah blurred: the shouting, the gunfire, the pounding footsteps. Her world narrowed to three paths, each one darker than the last: Lawson's van, Marcus's men, the empty, unpredictable night. A bullet cracked against the pavement near her foot, showering sparks across the ground. That was all the push she needed. "Get in," Kiana screamed, dragging her toward the open van. Aaliyah dove inside first, Kiana right behind her. Lawson slammed the door shut and leapt into the driver's seat. The engine roared to life. "Hold on," he shouted. The van screeched forward, tires spinning, fishtailing wildly as Lawson jerked the steering wheel. A gunshot punched into the rear panel. Aaliyah felt the metal vibrate behind her back. Kiana crouched low beside her, gripping the edge of a storage crate. "Stay down. They won't stop firing." Lawson took a sharp turn that nearly flung them sideways. The streetlights blurred past the windows in long streaks. Aaliyah pressed her bleeding palms against her jeans, breath shaking uncontrollably. Her entire body trembled with exhaustion, terror, disbelief. She whispered, Kiana, what's happening to my life? Kiana's voice softened, even over the chaos. You're stepping into the truth. That's always violent. Lawson spoke loudly from the front. Those men aren't trained to kill, only to take you. So long as you're with me, they'll escalate. This is your father's legacy, Aaliyah. And right now, it's the only reason you're still alive. The words chilled her. Another bullet tore through the back window. The glass burst into fragments. Aaliyah screamed and ducked. Lawson cursed under his breath and took a hard right onto a dim industrial road. Behind them, 2 dark SUVs appeared, speeding fast. They're on us. Kiana shouted. Lawson slammed his hand on the dashboard. I know. The van swerved violently as he tried to lose them, but the SUVs stayed close. Their headlights, a pair of hungry eyes in the rear window. Aaliyah gripped her seat. Where are we going? Somewhere safe, Lawson said through clenched teeth. If they don't cut us off first, Kiana peered through the broken glass. They're trying to corner us 2 on the back, 1 coming up on the side. Lawson's jaw tightened. There's a route through the old depot, but it's risky. We don't have a choice. Kiana barked. They sped toward a chain-link gate. Lawson rammed it with the bumper metal, screeched, and the gate buckled inward. The van lurched hard, but Lawson kept control. They barreled through the abandoned train depot, weaving between rusted freight cars and broken concrete pillars. The SUVs followed, engines roaring. They're still coming. Aaliyah cried. Kiana turned to Lawson. There's only one way to lose them. We need to go underground. Lawson nodded grimly. Then get ready. This part's rough. Swerve toward an old service tunnel barely wide enough for the van. The vehicle scraped the sides, sparks flying. The narrow walls funneled them into darkness. The SUVs hesitated for a moment, but then entered the tunnel too. Aaliyah's breath hitched. We're trapped. No, Lawson said. They are. He flicked off the headlights, plunging the tunnel into pitch black. Only faint emergency lights dotted the ceiling. The van accelerated, bouncing over uneven ground. The SUVs struggled behind them, clipping the walls, metal crunching. Kiana leaned forward. When we exit this tunnel, we're heading straight to the safe house. Then she needs answers. Lawson's voice hardened. And she'll get them. Aaliyah looked between them, realization dawning. You too. You've worked together before. Kiana didn't deny it. Not by choice. But we're the only ones left from your father's circle. Her heart clenched painfully. Her father's circle, her father's war. And now? Hers. A blinding light appeared at the end of the tunnel, the exit. Lawson drove toward it at full speed. Aaliyah braced herself. As the van burst into the open night only to freeze in. Terror. 5 black vehicles were waiting outside, surrounding the exit, blocking every possible path. Kiana inhaled sharply. Oh God! They anticipated the safe house. Aaliyah stared at the wall of vehicles closing in. Trapped again, her voice trembled. What do they want from me now? Don't miss the next part, where Aaliyah finally learns why she was the key to her father's missing evidence, and why Marcus will burn the entire city before letting her escape. The wall of black vehicles stood like a barricade of shadows, engines humming, headlights blazing through the night. Aaliyah felt the air tighten in her chest as the van skidded to a halt. Tires screeched. The smell of burnt rubber filled the air. They boxed us in, Kiana whispered, her hand instinctively reaching for her baton. Lawson slammed his palm against the steering wheel. Damn it! They must have intercepted the signal. They knew we were coming. Doors from the surrounding vehicles opened in unison. Men in dark tactical gear stepped out, silent, methodical, disciplined. Not the chaotic muscle Marcus used earlier. These were trained strategists. Enforcers. Aaliyah's heart pounded painfully. Kiana. She whispered, are these Marcus's men too? Kiana's jaw tightened. Some are, but not all. Lawson's voice dropped to a grave murmur. This is the ARC line's upper tier. They only move when something critical is in play. And I'm the something, Aaliyah realized. A prickling cold slid down her spine. "What do they want with me?" she demanded, her voice cracking despite her attempt to sound strong. "What could I possibly have?" Lawson reached into the glove compartment and pulled out a small metal case. Worn, dented, familiar in the most unsettling way. He placed it in Alia's trembling hands. "You've seen this before, haven't you?" She felt her breath trip. She had seen something like it years ago when she found her father sitting alone at the kitchen table the night before his death. He'd been staring at a case just like this one, his face pale, exhausted, terrified. She was too young to understand. Lawson unlocked the case. Inside was a single USB drive. Old, scratched, labeled in neat handwriting. "C. Carter. Evidence A." Aaliyah's throat tightened. "My father's—" Kiana knelt beside her. "They tortured people for years trying to find this. They tore apart every home he'd ever visited. They even went after my family." Aaliyah stared at the drive, confusion and dread twisting in her stomach. "Then why didn't they find it?" "This looks old. Anyone could have taken it." "That's the problem," Lawson said. "Without the encryption key, it's useless." Aaliyah blinked. "The encryption key." Lawson nodded. "Christopher didn't hide the drive. He hid the key in someone he trusted." Her hands trembled. "That someone," Lawson continued, "was you." Aaliyah felt the world shift violently. "Me? I don't know anything. I don't have any key." Kiana touched her arm. "Aaliyah, when your father knew the arc line was closing in, he took you to a clinic 2 weeks before his death. He had something implanted in you." Aaliyah's voice broke. "Implanted? What are you talking about?" "A micro-ident chip," Lawson explained. "It holds the encryption string that unlocks this drive. It's dormant, undetectable, unless scanned at a certain frequency. That's why they needed you alive. That's why Marcus married you. You're the last living cipher to your father's evidence." Aaliyah's breath shattered inside her chest. All the years she spent thinking she was ordinary, just a florist, just a lonely woman trying to build a life, suddenly felt like a mask someone else had put on her. Her entire existence, her marriage, her safety, a setup. Her voice was barely a whisper. "My father used me to protect his secrets." "No," Kiana said softly. "He used himself. He protected you until the last breath he took. You were never meant to carry this alone." A sudden metallic click echoed outside. A gun safety releasing. Lawson's eyes widened. "They're advancing." The tactical men closed in around the van, moving in a tightening circle. No shouts, no warnings. Just the silent precision of professionals who already knew the outcome. Kiana grabbed Alia's hand. "We're not giving you to them? Not alive?" Aaliyah felt her pulse spike. "What do we do?" Lawson reached beneath the driver's seat and pulled out a detonator, small, black, deadly. "Buy time." Alia's eyes widened. "Are you going to blow up the van?" "Just the ground under it," he said quickly. "There's an old sewer shaft beneath us. It'll collapse just long enough to break the circle." Kiana cursed. "That's insane. It's the only way." Lawson snapped. The men outside raised their weapons toward the van. Aaliyah grasped the USB drive in her shaking hand. Her father's past, her stolen life, her uncertain future, all converged in one decision. "Lawson," she whispered, voice trembling. "Do it." He pressed the detonator. A violent roar erupted beneath them. The asphalt cracked. The earth opened. And the van dropped. Don't miss the final part where Aaliyah faces the truth, the escape, and the heartbreaking choice that will end this story forever. The van plunged downward, metal groaning as the ground beneath it gave way. Aaliyah clutched the seat, bracing as they crashed into darkness. Concrete shattered. Dust exploded into the air. The world jolted violently, and then silence. Aaliyah coughed as debris rained around them. The van lay tilted in the collapsed sewer shaft, its headlights flickering weakly against the damp stone walls. Water dripped steadily from somewhere above Aaliyah. Kiana's voice called out, strained. She pulled herself upright, gripping the broken window frame. "You okay?" Aaliyah nodded shakily. I, I think so. Lawson groaned from the driver's seat, blood trickling down his forehead. Move, we don't have long. They'll regroup. But when he pushed the door, it only opened halfway bent from the fall. Kiana kicked it hard. The metal screeched and finally gave way. Cold air rushed in. Aaliyah crawled out behind her, boots sinking into a shallow stream of water running through the old sewer tunnel. Above them, the hole they'd fallen through glowed faintly with streetlight. Shadows moved along the edge of Marcus's tactical men peering down, trying to track their escape. We need to keep going, Lawson said, limping but focused. These tunnels run for miles. If we get far enough, I can call for extraction. Kiana supported Alia as they hurried deeper into the tunnel. The air grew colder, filled with the echo of dripping water and distant rumbling pipes. Each step felt heavier. Every breath sharp from dust and fear. Alia's heartbeat pounded in her ears. Her father's evidence. The implanted key. Marcus's deception. Her life rewritten without her consent. She whispered, I don't want to be part of this. Any of this. Kiana's voice softened. I know, but you didn't choose this. Your father did what he had to. And we're going to finish what he started so you can finally live free. Free Alia didn't even remember what that felt like. The tunnel stretched endlessly. But Lawson eventually stopped near a rusted maintenance ladder leading up to a sealed hatch. This is it, he said, catching his breath. Above us is an old service building. If we can get through, we'll be out of their grid. Alia took a step forward. A voice echoed through the tunnel. A voice she knew. A voice she once trusted with her entire heart. Alia, please, stop running. Marcus's silhouette emerged from the shadows behind them, illuminated by faint yellow light. He wasn't alone. Two of the bald men flanked him. But Marcus wasn't holding a weapon. His hands were open, expression calm, almost tender. Alia, he said softly, you're hurt. Let me help you. Her chest tightened painfully. Don't come near me. Marcus's eyes flicked to Lawson and Kiana. They're lying to you. They've always lied. Your father wasn't a hero, Alia. He was dangerous. He put you at risk long before I entered your life. Lawson stepped forward. Don't listen to him, Marcus raised a hand. She deserves to hear the truth. My truth. His voice trembled, but not with fear, with something like heartbreak. I did love you, Marcus whispered. Everything else grew out of necessity. But you were never a mission to me. You were my peace. Tears stung Alia's eyes. If you loved me, why trap me? Why lie? Marcus took one careful step forward. Because without you, everything collapses. Your father hid a truth that could burn this entire country to ash. I was trying to guide you safely, gently, Kiana scoffed. Kidnapping, stalking, married under manipulation. Very gentle. Marcus's jaw tightened. I would never hurt her. Then let her go. Lawson said. Marcus met Alia's eyes again. His voice cracked. Alia, come home. Alia's breath trembled. Home, that word used to mean warmth. Flowers, safety. Marcus's embrace, now, felt like a cage closing around her. With shaking hands, she pulled the USB drive from her pocket. This belongs to my father. And I'm finishing what he couldn't. Marcus's face broke first in disbelief, then in devastation. Alia, don't do this. But she was done being chosen, done being used, done being hunted. She stepped back toward Kiana and Lawson. This is my choice, she said. Marcus closed his eyes. A single tear slipped down his cheek. But when he opened them again, the softness was gone, replaced by cold resolve. Then you leave me no choice, he whispered. Kiana yanked the hatch open above them. Lawson boosted Alia up the ladder. She climbed with trembling limbs as Marcus's men rushed forward. Kiana followed her up. Lawson stayed behind a moment longer, blocking the tunnel with his body. Kiana, get her out, he shouted. Alia screamed as the hatch slammed shut. And for the first time in her life, the night above felt like freedom men like grief she'd carry forever. Aaliyah Carter survived. She exposed the arc line. She vanished from public records. And for the first time, she owned her life not as someone's target or someone's wife, but as the woman Christopher Carter fought to protect. If this story touched your heart, please like the video and subscribe for more inspiring stories. And if you have any questions or want to know what happened next with the characters, comment below. I'll be reading them all. Sometimes life takes turns we never expect. Every person in this story carried their own pain, their own choices, and their own consequences. Maybe you saw yourself in one of them, or maybe it reminded you of someone you once knew. What do you think happened next? What would you have done if you were in their place? If you have any questions about what happened to the other characters, or if you want me to share more about them, just comment below. I read every message you leave, and your thoughts truly mean a lot to me. And if this story touched your heart, inspired you, or even made you think differently, please take a second to like this video and subscribe to the channel. It helps me keep sharing stories that move people, open minds, and remind us we're all human. At the end of the day, your support keeps these stories alive. Thank you for watching, for feeling, and for being part of this journey. More powerful stories are coming soon. Stay tuned and stay kind.